USCHO.com. This is the USCHO Game of the Week podcast from US College Hockey Online at USCHO.com. An in-depth look at this week's top college hockey matchup and a preview of the other big games.
Welcome to the USCHO Game of the Week podcast for Wednesday, March 13th, 2019. I'm Ed Trefzger alongside Jim Connelly. And before we dive in, a reminder that this episode is sponsored by the NCAA Frozen Four, coming up April 11th and 13th at KeyBank Center in Buffalo. Visit ncaa.com/Frozen4. Coming up this weekend, it's the quarterfinal round of the NCHC tournament. North Dakota is at Denver, and Saturday's game, game 2 of the series, will be the USCHO Game of the Week.
And we are joined now by a longtime friend of USCHO and one of the, I guess now you can call him one of the veteran beat writers in the game of college hockey. That's Brad Schlossman from the Grand Forks Herald. And Brad, welcome. I don't know if it's okay to call you a veteran writer. You still look very young, but I know you've been around this game long enough. I feel like veteran's the right word.
Yeah, I was going to say, does that mean I'm getting old now? I'm getting old man status here?
I don't think you get Jocko Connolly status, but we'll definitely give you a few aged years. Hey, and maybe this season, if you're around this North Dakota team, might have aged you a little bit more. It's been kind of an up and down season, but a pretty decent end to it with the weekend against Omaha, 3 wins heading into the playoffs, and now you really have what is a premier quarterfinal series in the NCHC with North Dakota heading out to Denver.
Yeah, it should be a very compelling first round matchup. The last 3 times these teams have played in the regular season, I think the scores were 2-1, 2-1, and 1-1. So not a lot of offense, and that's kind of been the theme for North Dakota this year. They just have had a tough time translating scoring chances and possession into goals. If you look at their possession numbers this year, they're outstanding. I think they're number 2 in the nation behind Minnesota Duluth in both Corsi and Fenwick. And so they have the puck a lot. They have not been able to score a lot. So, in correlation with that, defensively, they've been pretty good because it's hard for the other team to score when North Dakota always has the puck. So it's just been one of those strange years. And really, if you're looking big picture, it's been one series that has killed this North Dakota team. And that was that weekend out at Canisius. They went out to Harbor Center and got swept. Right now, they're 18th in the pairwise. Had North Dakota gone out there and won 2 games, they'd be number 8 in the pairwise right now. And the storylines around this team would be completely different. So, one weekend has really done a number on this team.
Yeah, Brad, we did want to ask you about that Canisius weekend. Besides the pairwise and what that impact has been, has that been like a shadow hanging over the team, or have they just left that in the rearview mirror and moved on?
Well, I think generally speaking, they've moved on and they've kept playing. But every time you look at the pairwise, it's so hard to not go back and say, well, what if? On that one series. If you look at their play this year, it's kind of been, it doesn't really matter who the opponent is. You don't know what's going to happen. And Canisius ended up finishing in last place. They lost 2 games out there. But then if you look at the top 10 teams in the pairwise, UND beat Minnesota Duluth twice. They beat St. Cloud State. They beat Denver. They beat Western Michigan. They've beaten more top 10 teams than anyone in the country. So it's really been a weird year where this is a tough team to predict. And I think that goes along with the first stat I was saying. If they pop a couple goals early, they're tough to beat because they play so well defensively and they don't allow a whole lot. If they get behind, it's tough for them to catch up. And it doesn't seem to matter who the opponent is on either side of that. So it's just been kind of a weird year in that sense.
Do you have a sense of why that's been? Is it a case of the chances not being high quality? Has it been just the luck of being up against a really hot goaltender? Is there anything that that you were or maybe more importantly, Brad Berry and his coaching staff can point to that have been the cause of this?
Well, I think it's been a little bit of all of the above. When it's happened, the number of times it's happened, I don't think you can just chalk it up to a hot goaltender. I think every year you're going to have 2 or 3 of those games, right? But this team's had like 11 of those games. I think they've probably lost double-digit number of games when they've outshot their opponent by double digits. It was a couple weeks ago now, so I haven't updated the statistic yet, but I went and looked at teams' records when they outshoot their opponent by double digits, and I think the other 7 NCHC teams' winning percentage in that situation was 800. UND was under 500. So I think I don't think you can just chalk it up to a hot goalie when it's happened that many times. There's something more to it. I think some nights it's that they aren't getting grade A's. Other nights they're getting the grade A's. And this team definitely does not have a Brock Besser or a Matt Fratt, and they're one of those super high-end guys that's going to score a lot. Their D-core is very good, and their D-core is very offensive. I think their top 3 guys on the team in shot attempts are defensemen. So I think it's a little bit of the makeup of the team as well. If you were to ask me before the season started, I would have said, yeah, I mean, scoring is going to be the question mark for this team, and it's kind of played out that way.
We are talking with Brad Schlossman from the Grand Forks Herald, and I guess when I look at the statistics for this team, it really does play out. You are used to seeing North Dakota double-digit scorers, goal scorers, point guys that are in the 30s, 40s, 50s. Top scorer Jordan Kawaguchi, 26 points. He happens to be the only goal scorer with a double-digit goal total, 10 goals. And it's exactly 10. It's not 20. It's not 25. That almost feels, it's kind of the point you were just making, that feels so un-North Dakota-like about this team. Mm-hmm. It's just not something that fans are used to seeing when you look at North Dakota's stats.
Yeah, it's definitely different. And Kawaguchi just got to those 10 goals on Saturday night. He scored twice, including the overtime winner, to get to 10. I think there's a couple things that go into it. Obviously, early signings play a part in it. They have a bunch of guys who could be on this team in the NHL. Brock Besser, Tyson Jost, Shane Gersich, Christian Wolanin. All those guys could be on this team, and they're gone. That plays a little bit into it. Nick Jones, probably the guy I would have told you at the start of the season, I think will lead this team in scoring. He's missed 11 games with injury this year, so that didn't help. But, just in general, I think this was always going to be a team that had that type of makeup. Grant Mismatch, by the way, another guy who, I probably would have told you at the start of the season would finish top 2-3 on the team in scoring. He's missed a month and a half with injuries. So they've had some injuries to the guys who probably would have been scoring. They've had some early departures. And then just that's kind of the makeup of this team. And it almost reminds me the team that went to the Frozen Four in Philly that year. That team wasn't overly offensive either. And so it's not completely unheard of for UND not to have a huge offensive guy, because this team reminds me a little bit of that one, but it's definitely different. It hasn't happened too many times. I've been around for 15 years, and I can only think of a couple teams that had this type of a makeup.
What about the back end and goal? Obviously Adam Shield did some great things this weekend. He did not get a start last weekend. Is everything okay health-wise for him, or was this just an opportunity to maybe get some time in for the sophomore?
Yeah, no, Shield's been excellent this year. I think he's probably been the biggest pleasant surprise for this team. But third period against Western Michigan a couple weeks ago, he suffered a knee injury, and time will tell if he's able to play again this season. It's not looking great. It obviously depends on how long North Dakota lasts, whether he may be able to get back in the net. But that was definitely a tough injury for this team, because, he was, I would argue, he may be the best freshman goalie I've seen at UND in my time here, including Aaron Dell, Zane McIntyre, Cam Johnson, some of those guys. Those guys all ended up being outstanding goaltenders, but as a freshman, I don't think they were where Shield is. Fortunately for them, Peter Tome's come in and played very well. I think the D corps has helped him out. They've played very well lately, and Peter really has stepped back in after he was out for a while with an injury himself. And he's really been able to come in and play well in Shields' absence.
What are we thinking this weekend with Denver? How do you handicap this? Obviously, they've had some low-scoring games against one another this year. I guess when you look at both of these teams, that's a distinct possibility again. It's a 1-2-1 record for North Dakota thus far against the Pioneers. But what are your thoughts on what you're going to see out there in Denver this weekend?
Yeah, I think that's not surprising that the scores have been low. I think those are the types of teams we're seeing here. I think those are probably the types of games we're going to have. The last time they played it was 1-1, and I think the goal Denver scored was a pass from behind the goal line that hit a guy in the boot and went in. So goals can be at a premium. Denver's goaltending's been excellent, and they've had two goaltenders that have been excellent. Both Devin Cooley and Philip Larson have had great years. I have no idea what they're going to do with their goaltenders this weekend, but those guys have been great. UND's D corps has played really well this year. Like I said, Peter Tome's come in and done a nice job for UND. But both of these teams very good defensively. Both of these teams not super explosive offensively. So I think that lends to a low-scoring series, goals at a premium. And if you can get a lead, I think both of these teams are tough to rally against just because of the way they play and defend.
Brad, you mentioned earlier in the week that this is the first time in 16 seasons that North Dakota didn't end up in the top half of its league. And they're not hosting. And I know you just posted an article on the Grand Forks Herald interview with Josh Fenton asking about that impact. Is this a major cash cow that's disappeared for the NCHC?
For sure. It's, if you think about the size of the arenas and the price they're able to charge for first round, North Dakota is about 12,000 people they can get in. What's the second biggest rink in the league? 6,000 maybe. So you're talking double the revenue by having it in Grand Forks. And they've had that every year so far. We all knew that wasn't going to last. It's not like every year that's going to happen. And the other question mark is if North Dakota gets to the Frozen Face-Off where they bring tons of fans. The other two Western-based leagues, the WCHA and Big Ten, both threw the towel in on their neutral site tournament and went to only home sites. The NCHC is the lone holdout right now. And if North Dakota doesn't host or doesn't make the Frozen Face-Off, looking at the revenues is going to be very interesting. And if something like that happens a few years in a row and the league has to take a hit there, you got to wonder if they're going to say, hey, look, this isn't working out. Or maybe it'll work the other way. Maybe we'll find out that the league is certainly not dependent on the North Dakota revenue to stay strong. So this year is going to be a very interesting experiment for the league.
Well, I know that everybody kind of feels that when North Dakota isn't successful, it might be the merchandisers, the websites like USCHO. We feel a lack of traffic and obviously the leagues as well. Brad Schlossman, thanks for your time. We will hopefully catch up with you at the Frozen Four. Will you be in Buffalo either way this year?
That is
it's a little bit of a drive for you, huh?
We'll see. I don't think I could drive that far. I would love to be there. I've already been there this year, and it was a great visit. And just the way that the area is developed around Harbor Center, I think fans who went to it in 2003 are going to really enjoy the updates and progress that's been made since then.
Yeah. One more thing. When is your all league team of best food places coming out? Is that something that will be popping out soon? I mean, I know people read that every year. I always look for it and think about where am I going to go if I'm on the road again.
Yeah, it's the only blog post my sister reads I do all year. So I think I'm going to have to kick that out here maybe after the regionals, and we'll see. But there's for those going to the Frozen Four, I got some for you from Buffalo. So look forward to that.
Well, we appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll catch up with you down the road. Brad Schlossman from the Grand Forks Herald.
And a reminder, you can hear Brad Schlossman along with Nate Ewell from College Hockey Inc. on the College Hockey Today podcast. Visit collegehockeyinc.com for more information, and be sure to check out what Brad writes in the Grand Forks Herald. We'll be back with more preview of this weekend's games after this from the NCAA Frozen Four, coming up April 11th and 13th at KeyBank Center in Buffalo.
Speed and precision, unrelenting power. This trophy is not given, it must be earned. The 2019 NCAA Frozen Four, April 11th and 13th at KeyBank Center in Buffalo.
With a shot, saved by Morris. Takes the shot,
Visit ncaa.com/Frozen4 and get your tickets today.
Continuing now with the USCHO Game of the Week podcast, I'm Ed Trefzger, joined by my co-host, Jim Connelly. And Jim, here we are all the way into the playoffs, and there are a lot of stories, a lot of interesting matchups. Why don't we go league by league and pick out a game or two that we think might be the one to provide an upset or maybe the most compelling storyline. First, let's start with Atlantic hockey. We'll go in alphabetical order with this. What stands out to you as a matchup that could show an upset or maybe has a compelling story?
You know what? For me, I think that Robert Morris Bentley series is pretty compelling. Robert Morris, that's a team with a lot of history in this tournament. They've done very well. It has been a down year. Has not been the year that you would think they would have, but they're going to go to Bentley. It's their first time ever going to the new arena, the Bentley Arena. And for the Falcons, they don't have a lot of experience here. They haven't really been in this position where they've been the home team, where they've been the dominant team, the favorite. This has been a great second half for them, but I still say that experience plays a large role in postseason tournaments. And I think that, a lot of the other components that play a role, goaltending and power play, Bentley is doing very well in both of those areas. But when you don't have that experience, if you face any adversity, sometimes you can start to panic. So that's one series in Atlantic hockey that I really have my eye on, because I do wonder if Robert Morris can get out of the gates fast on Friday night, can they take control of that series early?
I'm going to point out Army at AIC. AIC has been the class of the league this year, in a league that doesn't separate very much from top to bottom. I think if Army can play a physical game and get a goal or two and get a bit of a lead, they may have a good shot against the Yellow Jackets. And one other oddity of Atlantic hockey, because Webster Bank Arena, where Sacred Heart plays, has obligations on Saturday and Sunday, the series actually starts tonight, RIT at Sacred Heart, for a best of three Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Well, let's move on to the Big Ten, and we have two semifinal games after quite the weekend last weekend. And that one is one that has arena obligations affecting the schedule too. Penn State will be at Ohio State on Sunday. The other semifinal, Minnesota at Notre Dame, happens on Saturday.
Yeah, the one I'm really looking at there, these are single eliminations, and that's different than the WCHA, which also is in their semifinals, but they're playing the best of three. For the Big Ten, these are single eliminations, and if you want to put some money on one, I'm putting it on Minnesota. They're playing well. They're the dangerous team. They have to win to get into the NCAA tournament. They probably have to win the Big Ten. I think they can get through this game and maybe have a chance if they lose in the final. But the reality is, that's a pretty slim chance. This Minnesota team is hungry. They're playing well. Not that Notre Dame's not. Their defense locked down, did not give up a goal in last week's quarterfinal round. So I think that's a heck of a game to watch, obviously. And, is there a chance that maybe Penn State can upset Ohio State? Of course, especially the fact that Ohio State has been sitting for a week while everybody else has been playing. But I really have my eye on. I want to watch, and I will. I believe it's on Big Ten Network, but I will have, if I can't watch, I will have my DVR going for that game on Saturday night, Minnesota at Notre Dame.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. 7 out of 8 games for Bob Motzko's Gophers. Too bad nobody's been coming to watch them play. Well, let's move on to the ECAC. All the top seeds in the first round won. So we have the second round matchups with the top 4 hosting the bottom 4.
Yeah, and I look at Union at Cornell as a chance for a potential upset. Not that Cornell is not a solid team. They're very good, but they've had some stumbles down the stretch. And Union is a team that just underperformed for most of the season. They proved last weekend, though, that they were a pretty good team, a 4-1 to 4-0 win to advance. They did so soundly. Now, they do have to go on the road. And, we saw last weekend only one road team won all weekend in all 4 of the leagues that were active. So it's not easy, but if there's one upset I think I could see coming in that league, I look at the Union Cornell as the compelling series.
5 versus 4 is not much of a separation, and the only Ivy League matchup is Dartmouth at Harvard. Maybe the Big Green in 3? We'll see. That's going to be a pretty good series, I think.
It's possible. We saw this Dartmouth offense explode way back the first game of the season for 7 against Harvard. They scored 8 on Sunday night against St. Lawrence to close out their best of 3 series. So if that offense gets going, you never know. Harvard, I believe they're still on their backup goaltender, who I wouldn't call a backup because he's played very well, but Lackey, their starter, I believe is still hurt and won't be back. I don't know if it's season ending, but I don't believe he's supposed to be back this weekend. So that's a very interesting series as well.
In Hockey East, 2 teams are probably in the NCAAs already. UMass definitely. Providence is close. But big series there, but it seems like the home teams all have the advantage.
They do. I think that Lowell BU series is pretty interesting. BU tends to play Lowell very well and vice versa. Lowell has been an excellent home team in the playoffs under Norm Bazin. They've advanced when they've been in the quarterfinal round. They didn't advance the first year he was their coach, but they advanced to the Garden every year after that. Last year they got home ice in the first round and got upset by Merrimack, but when they've been in the quarters, this has been a team that's been able to finish things out. They didn't have a good finish to their season, though. I think it was 1-3-3 down the stretch, not needing much to close out home ice, and they weren't able to do it on their own. They had to back in when Maine upset BU last Saturday night. So that is one for sure. I also look at that Maine Northeastern series. Maine, when they're playing well, they are such a scary team. Northeastern is deep. I like this team a lot. Probably a deeper team, believe it or not, than last year's NCAA tournament team. But Maine, when they're going, they are scary. And they were going last Saturday night. And, their offense can crank. And if they get going, watch out.
When we look at the NCHC, obviously the one we talked about in the first part of the podcast with Brad Schlossman is a marquee matchup. North Dakota at Denver, great programs, great histories. But earlier this week, Coach Andy Murray of Western Michigan stepped up to the microphone and said, hey, we can't give out free tickets because the league is putting on this tournament, but I'm going to write the check for the Lawson Loonies to get in free because he wants the student section there. And from what I understand, that means his wife is not getting the new kitchen, according to the coach. But Colorado College at Western Michigan, if I had to pick a series to be at, and, I suppose I could be talked into Denver, North Dakota, because it'll be great. But if there was one series to really be at, I think right now, Colorado College at Western Michigan is going to be a great one.
Yeah, let's look at Colorado College for the last month or so. Back the last week of January, they sweep Miami on the road. They then split with Minnesota Duluth at home, a pretty good split. They tie and then lose to St. Cloud State. Both nights they had leads in the third period that they weren't able to hold on to. The CC then splits with Western Michigan, losing in overtime before coming back with an 8-2 win. I mean, these are the same 2 teams. And the last time they played, CC thumped them 8-2. You then had a loss to Denver, a win and loss against North Dakota, and then a sweep of Denver on a home and home. I mean, this CC team is playing good hockey. It's playing its best hockey down the stretch. They are scary and they have the talent. That's the thing. They have plenty of talent to get things done. And if they start scoring, if they get the goaltending that they've been getting down the stretch, that could be a very tough series for Western.
You mentioned goaltending. Alex Leclerc has been playing phenomenally down the stretch.
He sure has, and that's the story. I mean, when you have a goaltender, and back to that formula I mentioned, experience. Okay, they don't have a lot of experience, but power plays, good special teams, and goaltending. The number of times these best of 3 series in my 20-something years of doing this, the number of times I've watched a goaltender steal a series, it probably averages once a year. And could this be the weekend that, when Alex Leclerc can go in and do his job and pull off 2 wins? Absolutely.
And in the WCHA, it's semifinal best of 3 series, Lake Superior State at Minnesota State and Bowling Green at Northern Michigan.
Yeah, and these are 2 toss-ups for me. I think Lake State has played very well, and they're going to get a Minnesota State team that's hot and is, ready to lock itself in to a number 1 seed very soon in the NCAA tournament. And then Bowling Green and Northern, throw out the records on that one. These are 2 very good teams. Bowling Green's ranked, Northern's not, but Northern is the home team. So this is a very competitive weekend series for both of these semifinals, both best of 3s. So I think that if you're going to either one of these, you're going to get your money's worth.
The only team that doesn't have to worry about the NCAA postseason is Minnesota State. Bowling Green, Northern Michigan, and Lake Superior all need wins this weekend.
Yeah, they're all fighting for their lives. And, if 2 of them advance, so if you eliminate Minnesota State this weekend, that's going to move that cut line again within the pairwise. And, that's one thing you have to keep an eye on, the fact that nobody in the WCHA, nobody in the Big Ten, aside from those top seeds, Ohio State and Minnesota State have qualified or put themselves in position. And the thought that, you get an upset, next thing you know, that cut line moves up and you're talking about maybe only the top 12 or 13 are getting into the NCAA and as an at-large team.
And we'll probably know more about that on Sunday night when we record our weekend review podcast. Until then, and until next time, for Jim Connelly, I'm Ed Trefzger.
This has been the USCHO Game of the Week podcast, a production of U.S. College Hockey Online. Visit uscho.com/podcasts to listen or subscribe.